of today's date, and note the presence of Councillor Dutta. Councillor Dutta, would you be able to please move to co-opt Councillor Harvey, please?
Yes, I do move.
Thank you. And if I could ask someone to confirm the minutes of Thursday, the 25th of November, 2021.
Yes, I do.
There are no supplementary items. Is there any indications of pecuniary and conflicts of interest on the open agenda? There being none, is any item of the two items that anyone wishes to move to the closed?
We move, I suggest, Chair, the item number 6.2 and make that 6.1 and then...
Understand. Yeah, look, that's fine. So we've had a request from the Chief Executive who has another engagement to deal with item 6.2 first. Are we in agreement as a committee?
Yes.
That being the case, thank you. Chief Executive Officer, we're in your hands.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's terrific to be here, and thank you, Councillor Harvey, for stepping in at the last minute. Much appreciated. Chair, I did prepare a presentation that I might ask Craig to share with you now. So the purpose of this report that was provided to tonight's committee meeting was to talk about our proposed economic development industry roundtables. We're proposing to hold these in March of this year, and the reason for them is to really start off a kind of engagement process around the development of a new economic development strategy. So I'll just get you to move to the next slide. Thanks, Craig. So I guess the economic development strategy, whilst we have had one at the City of Hobart for some time, it's acknowledged that it's sort of come to the end of its sort of life as a strategy, and there's a lot happening within the city, obviously a lot happening around the world and nationally as a result of COVID. But Hobart specifically is growing, and we need to ensure that future growth is guided in a way that will strengthen what's terrific about Hobart, but also build on its position as a vibrant, livable and connected city. So it's really, Chair, within this context that we're preparing an economic development strategy that will outline our plan for sustainable economic growth now and into the future. Next slide, thanks, Craig. So the economic development strategy, not dissimilar to the one that's led you thus far, will provide the basis for how we can build the economy of the future. It's about focusing on attracting and retaining diverse and high-value jobs for current and future generations. It will also articulate the actions necessary to ensure a healthy environment and foster an inclusive society as well. And this is certainly something that the community vision speaks to in Hobart. It is about taking everyone along and not leaving, cohorts of our community behind. So focusing on that sort of social justice, social cohesion element of this strategy will be quite important as well. As you know, Chair, the decisions that are made today will determine the shape of the city's economy in 10 years' time and also shape those opportunities available for future generations. The strategy will take into account Hobart's unique island identity and a place to really ensure that it is a great place to live and to do business in. And certainly we're committed organisationally to supporting this committee and council more broadly in those endeavours. Craig, next slide, please. So the economic development strategy will be informed by a comprehensive community consultation process, including roundtables. So the purpose of tonight's discussion, Chair, is really just to provide that broader context of why we're hosting these roundtables in March, but also just to give the committee some comfort about the sort of methodology that will be used to develop the economic development strategy. It won't just rely on roundtables. It will also include surveys, online feedback and interviews with economists, industry and community stakeholders and Tasmanian and Australian government representatives. The opportunity with this strategy, Chair, is to ensure that we're playing a critical role both in the sort of state and national landscape as well, to really understand where we can value add and complement the work of other levels of government to ensure that, we're allocating our resources and effort where it's most needed to really get a good economic uplift across the City of Hobart. So the industry roundtables will guide how the city, will respond, both in terms of the immediate term around the economic challenges we face, but also leverage those challenges and opportunities that will impact the city over 10 years. So the industry roundtables, that's actually a typo there where it refers to 2. There'll actually be a series of probably 6 or 7 roundtables across key industry groups. The invitation will be circulated to local business stakeholders along with other industry representatives. So those industries, so we'll have one, for instance, focused on the creative industries. We'll have one on, new tech and sort of, e-commerce industries. So we'll have a series of roundtables targeting those specific industries to ensure that they're all represented. The invitation, as I mentioned, will be circulated. We're hoping to get those out following today's session, and together we'll identify priorities and associated measures that will enhance our economy, as I said, in the short, medium and longer term. We believe by creating a stable foundation for sustained economic growth, together we can shape Hobart's resilience around, the issues with COVID, but also an inclusive community that is supported by a robust economy, as I said earlier. So just making sure that we've got industry representatives from not just business, but also the community sector as well to sort of help guide this work. Thank you, Craig. Next slide.
That's all the slides.
Oh, thank you. That's the last one. So, Chair, that's just a brief overview. As I said, we're hoping to facilitate the roundtables in March. We are in the process of developing a more comprehensive brief to guide the development of the economic development strategy, but we are ready to lead off with those roundtables in March, and we'll get those invitations out as soon as we can to key industry groups.
Thanks, CEO. Could I open the floor, please, for comments from members first?
Thank you, Chair. Can I comment?
I'm sure Councillor Harvey will be okay, but I think he got in, but he's in the middle of my screen. But
okay, no, please, after you.
Mike, I'm still trying to coordinate my screens here so I can see the agenda and the images at the same time. So go ahead.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, Kelly, for that presentation. And I think, it is the right way to go. And I wish you all the very best in the process. I just have 1 or 2 questions, but let me just ask the first question. With regards to the community involvement, how will these community leaders be chosen? Will they be the peak community group, or it'll be wider than that?
Through you, Chair, we've actually got a list of stakeholders that we've assembled. So this is a list that has been provided to me by some of our staff, and it identifies some of those larger community organisations. And so you're right, it is those peak bodies, but the larger not-for-profit organisations, so community NGOs across the state. I'm happy to share that with you to make sure that it's a comprehensive list. And through you, Chair, I'm more than happy to include any additional invitations from agencies that you think we should approach, or indeed broader organisations. I'd have to just highlight too that the roundtables is really just the beginning of the process. As I said, there'll be a range of other opportunities for community members to engage in this as well. And that'll include the sort of survey, as well as some information sessions that we'll run for general community members as well. So we're yet to finalise the consultation strategy that will underpin this. We're really just kicking off with the roundtables first, and then we'll do a deeper dive, as I said, into other parts of the industries that we might explore, but also into community as well. And like with any strategy, Chair, it will be drafted, workshopped with elected members. And obviously this committee will play a key role, but it will also be put on public exhibition as well for general community feedback too, prior to its presentation to Council for adoption.
Thank you. Just 2 comments, Chair, if I may be allowed to do so.
No problem. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. And just want to make sure that we don't face the same situation when it was North Hobart parking meters. There was quite a lot of consultation, and somehow the other, there was something lacking. So that's point number one that I want to raise. And point number two, with regards to the survey, we will be given the survey questions before it goes out, or can we see it?
Through you, Chair, I'm more than happy to share those survey questions with you. In fact, we'll include for this committee information on the brief, so the outline of the development of the strategy that we're proposing to implement, and a copy of the consultation plan, as well as those key industry groups and others that have been invited to participate, as well as details on the survey.
Thank you.
Councillor Harvey.
Thanks, Chair. Craig, are you there? You're receiving? Craig?
I am, yes.
I just sent you a slide. Any chance you could put that slide up?
Yep, 1 second. There you go.
Okay, so I saw this today as part of a meeting I attended, and it's maybe not very clear, but the green are the boundaries that we need to be within. The orange is how far we've exceeded those boundaries as a species, basically. So what this shows us is, in most areas, we're travelling very badly as a species, but in others, we're still, like if you look at the stratospheric ozone depletion, we've pulled that back over time. So we've corrected that issue. That was a huge issue through the 70s. When it comes to ocean acidification, we're heading towards the boundary. From biological, these other areas, I'm having trouble reading them myself here. The novel entities, that's to do with things like plastic pollution and things which have increased by 80% since 2000. So the Biosphere Integrity, that means life on Earth. We've cooked it, basically. So we can expect thousands of species to go extinct in our lifetime. All of these orange areas are the excess we've had outside of the green zones. So when we talk about economics, for me, I think we need to start talking about what sort of economics, what sort of growth do we want? Do we want destructive growth, or do we want regenerative growth? So any strategy for Hobart, for me, needs to be able to pull back on the bad growth and help promote the good growth. So how do we engage in a conversation that people don't necessarily understand about the future of not just Hobart, but of humanity, and tackling the existential crisis that we're in at the moment? Climate change, which is a factor with ocean acidification, which has affected the east coast of Tasmania, for example, 5% of the kelp forests, which ran the entire length of the east coast of Tasmania, only 5% left. Where's the economy around that? There's a huge growth in looking at ways to restore that ecosystem with modern technology. I know of someone who's working on a swarm of drones, for example, that could kill or harvest the long-spine sea urchin. And there's billions of these sea urchins that need to be collected or killed in order to give the kelp forest an opportunity to grow back, that the species that are resilient to hot water, to the changing sea temperatures, could grow back. So these are the economic areas I'm interested in. I don't want to see rubbish economics or trying to attract things that don't benefit us as a species in Hobart, us as a community, us as a society, but also help repair the planet. Because by 2100, on the current trajectory, we're talking 3 degrees warming, which is catastrophic. So how do we create an economic system that keeps or pulls us back from the brink? How do we pull back to get inside the green zone for all the various activities that we do that's destructive? We need to start building a regenerative economy rather than a destructive economy. And there's opportunities galore coming over the horizon that are with us now, where we can be modern players in a new economy in Hobart and lead rather than just allow an economy to roll on. So this is my feedback now. And I'll keep banging on about this because this is the future of your grandkids. And if we don't get serious about it with developing an economy that helps us rather than potentially damages us, and it's not about making money, it's about growth in the right areas and degrowth in the bad areas. So there you go, Chairman. That's my little contribution for now.
I'm glad we brought you into this, Bill. Thank you.
I was going to say, you're going to block me out now and send me back to the...
No, we need you there, mate.
Yeah.
So look, I think it's an excellent process. I'd like to think that prior to the engagements commencing, you could develop a template which is of the deliverables, the one that you're seeking from it, and particular groups will vary, and obviously Bill's issues need to be taken into account in that. But
they're not mine, they're the world's.
I'm sorry, the world's through you. But I think if we can potentially have a template that's got the elements that are likely to come from that particular group, wherever they've come from, whether they're a professional body or whether they're a community sector body or wherever they're from, and then overlay that knowledge and that with something that we can try to streamline the outcome so that ultimately we've got the opportunity for officers to bring to us a marked up strategy which does take into account that a lot of these groups will have totally different requirements. And I mean, it's an obvious thing, but before we start, rather than at the end, if we start on the understanding that we're going to have a lot of negating factors and adding factors depending on the group, and then bring it back, and obviously those groups will have to be identified that they actually represent. Of course, we should listen to everyone, but if we have major sections of the economy, we need to pick them up, and we need to note the fact that they might be an element of 49% or an element of 20%, and that has an impact on the overall economic strategy going forward. It's a great strategy, but I think there's as much work to be done up front as there is conducting them and the downside of it at the outer end of it, I mean.
Through you, Chair, I agree, and certainly we can put that together. We're proposing to actually have quite a comprehensive agenda and program for these roundtables with some pre-reading and a bit of a sort of state of the city report that would sort of be a bit of a backgrounder, not, a huge volume to read, but certainly a bit of a summary of the state of the city and providing, I guess, some thoughtful sort of reading to have people prepared ahead of time to come along to participate in these sessions so that they can come prepared. Chair, if I may also just respond to Councillor Harvey's point, absolutely agree, and I'll certainly make sure that the brief and the next sort of iteration of the description of the strategy does actually pick that up. We've talked quite a bit about donut economics as well and different models internationally that does really pick up and speak to the sorts of issues around climate change and resilience more broadly that you've talked about. So that will certainly be something that will be centred to the strategy going forward. But also, as I mentioned, Hobart is quite unique, as is the state more generally. We do need to be looking at those industries that are actually, that they are industries, if we are growing in certain areas, they are the right industries. So, Councillor Harvey, just to sort of, I guess, underscore your point, that is certainly a whole growth sector that we see emerging, that's certainly happening in other parts of the world that we could see as being really well aligned with, a kind of a carbon neutral future and, really building on that natural environment and those new and emerging technologies.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anybody who'd like to make any further comment? It's a pretty significant process we're about to undertake, and we will need to make sure that when this matter comes Well, it'll come to council, I imagine, or won't. It'll just go to the committee then. And what's the process of pre-briefing the council itself?
So the process from here, Chair, will be that we'll prepare a report for a workshop with council that will outline the sort of proposed process, the timeframes around that, and then there will be iterative steps presented to this committee and then through to council. So I imagine the first product will essentially be a discussion paper that emerges from the first phase of consultation, which will be the roundtables. We'll share that with the committee and obviously council and go through a fairly consultative process from there. We're kicking off, Chair, the roundtables. Sorry, you'll recall that one of the council resolutions regarding the COVID business support was to actually conduct these roundtables at a point in time, you know, to help influence the response to COVID as well. So that's why it's been designed in a sort of short to medium, longer term focus. So we didn't want to do too much before we started to prepare for those roundtables, albeit that we will put this sort of background paper together to lead the discussion. But there'll be, you know, a fairly lengthy process to formulate the strategy to ensure that it does pick up on all of those things that it needs to, because it will have a 10-year outlook. So there's a lot to talk about in terms of imagining that sort of, you know, I guess, you know, you're saying, Councillor Harvey, about the sort of reimagined future that's, you know, more aligned to where we need to go from a climate change mitigation perspective.
Well, a whole range of issues. You know, we've led the nation with plastics. There's a new economy around plastics, you know, with compostables, and we've basically, you know, turfed single-use plastics to some degree. But a problem like plastics, for example, there's a $150 billion expansion going on in the next couple of decades, you know, several decades. So the plastic problem is going to get worse before it gets better, a lot worse before it gets better. So how do we resolve an issue like that? You know, how do we say, well, we don't allow polystyrene into Hobart, or whatever the new economy is that regenerates rather than destroys? And there's an opportunity to have some experts on this who potentially, I attended a forum today. I was really pleased to be invited to the launch of a new film, which I won't mention at the moment because it hasn't been released. But I did suggest that we could help screen this in Hobart. Beautiful film, absolutely beautiful film about a vision of the future. And as a council, you know, I'll tell you more maybe later when I know a bit more, but it's an inspiring vision of what we could be rather than what we are. So there's opportunities to actually, rather than just have roundtables, you know, square table roundtables sitting around, there's actually something that could stimulate the discussion that I'd like to share with you at some point.
Again, I think we can certainly arrange for something to happen within that roundtable structure. So look, thank you very much, CEO, and to my colleagues for that discussion. CEO, you have to go, so I wonder if someone could move that item be noted as is listed in the agenda. Thank you, Councillor Harvey. I'll move that. Everyone is in support, I believe so. So thank you, CEO. We'll meet you next time.
Thank you, Chair.
Excellent.
Good evening.
So we'll now move to 6.1, which is the COVID-19 business support and engagement update, and potentially hand over to Senior Advisor Economic, what's been developed by the Senior Advisor Economic Development. It's a question whether or not the members of the committee would like just a brief introduction, or you've read through that, except for you possibly, Councillor Harvey, you've read through the material that's there, which builds on, I think, some excellent work that's been done previously and is more by way of an update of a continuing program. Mr. Short, would you like to make any comment?
Yeah, Chair, through you. Mr. Doyle's on standby to give committee a briefing, if that's what committee would like.
Committee, do you feel you've got enough from the report? It's an embracive report.
I'd like an introduction, please, Chair, to catch up.
Thank you. Mr. Doyle, please.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. This report details the development on the initiatives and campaigns that we're looking to establish after the COVID response team have been formulated. This leads on from a memorandum that went up to Council on the 20th of January, giving an overview of the types of initiatives that we're undertaking to be able to support the local business economy. There's many different initiatives that we've highlighted there, some of which are well underway, others are still in the planning. So we're looking at really making it easier for businesses to trade out of COVID, as opposed to just handing out business grants, as the state government essentially looking after that area quite well. So things that we are looking at are establishing the outdoor dining program. We've offered different parking incentives. We've waived fees for outdoor dining. We've also re-established the Hello Hobart voice for the city. So we're sharing lots of different stories through that platform. We've also established a Hello Hobart business directory that has just gone live, and we'll be calling for expressions of interest for businesses to be able to log on and provide their information. And that'll be a hub that consumers can go to see how different businesses are trading, if there's any restrictions, if they're takeaway only, for example, if they've expanded their footprint to outdoor dining. The next round of business grants, the small tranche of grants we have left, around 2, will go out on Monday. That's the Local Business for Better Community grant, which was well subscribed in the first round. And also, we've established the Business Concierge, which is a direct line of communication for any businesses that need to be connected throughout the organisation, just to be able to streamline things, cut a bit of the red tape, so to speak. The Passport to Hobart campaign's coming back. So we'll seek approval for that to go again following the successful pilot last year. And we've established a dedicated communications resource to support the COVID-19 response team. So that's a pretty broad overview of what's detailed in the report, and happy to take any further questions if you have any specific queries.
Chair, I have a few questions.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for that introduction. Just a few observations again. Firstly, it appears that there is a more heavy leaning towards dining, cafes, and restaurants, and there has been some criticism with regards to that. That's one observation. Observation number 2, being in small business, I have a lot of connections with small business friends and people that I intermingle with. And in the city, they are complaining that parking is a big problem, and it's becoming a ghost city because people are not coming there. So I was wondering if there can be further parking exemptions, or it'll be too onerous economically for the city. Those are the 2 observations I want to make at this stage.
Mr. Doyle, any comment on that?
Yes, through you, Chair. The first of which being the perception of, I suppose, greater support for food and beverage dining establishments. Look, we are taking that on board. I think the way in which the team are looking to approach it to look to benefit the businesses that have really had the major impacts to date. We have the campaign, for example, the Passport to Hobart, that was proven and ready to go. So we didn't want to delay the release of that. But we're also working across the board to develop other strategies and initiatives as we receive more information day by day to support broader sectors. So even though this report is the first tranche of things that we're undertaking, that doesn't preclude us from looking at other opportunities to support the broader business sector as we move forward. In terms of the second initiative, we've just detailed the initial parking benefit that we provided with the opening of the regatta grounds from the 18th of December through to the 4th of February. We are continuing to work with the relevant officers in the parking area within the organisation to come up with different initiatives. But you do make a valid point, Councillor Dutta, that needs to be balanced with financial impacts. we're currently writing a report that will go up to the Finance and Governance Committee that will detail the financial implications of a lot of this work that we're discussing tonight. So we'll need to temper the enthusiasm to offer further discounts prior to us undertaking the appropriate economic modelling.
Thank you.
Chair, you're on mute.
Councillor Harvey? Now he's on mute. You're on mute, Bill.
Yes, I'm on mute. Will this be coming to us at council?
Chair, through you, it's just for noting. So, because it's obviously council considered this at a higher level 2 meetings ago. So the purpose of this report really was just to give committee something in more detail.
Okay.
Absolutely, if committee wanted this to go on council, you could resolve that.
No, that's okay. I'll have a thorough read and I'll get back to you if I have any further questions.
Could I have someone in the meeting, one of the elected representatives, move that this be noted? Thank you, Councillor Dudden. Thanks, Mr. Doyle, and to the rest of the team. It's significant, and you're really riding a horse that you're not sure where you're going, aren't you? You never know what's going to come around the corner. But it's a great job, and I think you should all be justly proud of what you've achieved. Moving along now to questions without, I think it's, a status report. Is someone prepared to move the status report? Thank you, Councillor Harvey. So that's been moved. Does anybody want to raise anything within that report? There is a lot going on in economic development. A lot of it's under the leadership at the moment of the CEO, who's having a range of discussions elsewhere within government and outside. And I've actually asked the Chief Executive if she could make herself available, I suspect, for every meeting to update us as a committee so that we're fully abreast and appraised of what actually discussions that are happening in the city at the present time. Anybody wish to raise anything on that status report? If not, if someone could move that it be received and noted. Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Questions without notice, folks, on the open? There being no questions on that. I don't think we need a recommendation to move into the closed anymore, but I would ask that
yes, we do, Chair.
We do, I'm sorry. Could I have someone please move that we move into the